We will be looking here at George Kelly and his role construct repertory, and in particular we'll look at his constructive alternativism, the fundamental postulate, and then his role construct repertory. So George Kelly had a relatively short life. He was born in Kansas. His father was a minister. He was an only child, and his undergraduate degree was in physics and math. But later he had his master's degree in sociology with work in leisure studies. He then had his education degree in Scotland, and he got his PhD in psychology, but he continued to work in the schools. And he became interested in clinical diagnoses, so finding particular characterizing people. He felt that there was not enough attention given to clear personality definitions, and so this is one reason he developed his role construct repertory. So he comes from quite a wide-ranging or varied background, so many perspectives he brings in. So what is a construct in psychology? We've had this before, but let's review. So construct generally refers to a mental construct, or a label that has only a mental representation with no physical representation and includes a domain of behaviors. So for example, intelligence is a mental construct. We can't get any physical measurement of it, and maybe it consists of, say, problem-solving ability, problem-solving speed, fluency, and flexibility. Maybe this is the domain of behaviors that we put together to form the construct of intelligence. Aggression is a mental construct, maybe consisting of dominance, assertiveness, strong-handedness. We would put together ideas of what this characteristic consists of. Agreeableness is a construct consisting of a desire for harmony, willingness to compromise, trust, might be some of the components of this particular characteristic. So constructs are just that. They're mental constructions, things that we build within our own minds, and they represent ideas, and they don't have physical measurements. So we find systematic ways to measure collective constructs. So understanding like the trait of agreeableness in general, we go to large-scale samples and identify tools to measure those among large-scale groups, but individually we also have our own constructs and especially dichotomies and categories that we make, and that's what George Kelly was interested in. So key concepts are constructive alternativism, and this is the idea that all of these constructs have a bunch of different alternative interpretations. So our experiences, our perceptions, our comparisons that we make, all of those are unique to ourselves. So there's one reality, but a lot of personal constructs. And I write red and pink down there because first off, where do we draw the line between red and pink? The place where I draw that line might be quite different from where you draw that line. And in fact, we don't even know whether what we perceive as red and pink is the same as what other people perceive. So there again, the constructs are individual, and they're never completely consistent with reality. So we don't know what is reality or even whether an objective reality exists. So we could think about this example. Do you have different constructs about what's interesting or boring? What you find interesting, I might find boring, and the vice versa. What is admirable and despicable? What is a perfect day? What is perfect weather? What a party should be like? What a college should be like? How hard a person should work? All of these are just different constructs that we have that are linked to our own life experiences, our own life space, we might say, quoting Lewin. So his fundamental postulate suggests that our behaviors and actions are shaped by the way we predict and anticipate what a situation will offer. So we're like scientists. He states it in a really weird way. A person's processes are psychologically channelized by the ways in which he anticipates events, but he just means that it's anticipating what's going to happen determines what we're going to think and do. So for example, how would you behave today if you know the world was going to end tomorrow? If you could anticipate that, how would you psychologically channel your processes? What if you knew you were going to win the lottery tomorrow? A more subtle example, how do you behave differently when you've heard that a professor whose class you're going to take is a lot of fun? anticipating that, do you behave differently in the classroom? Or when you've heard that someone's parties are a lot of fun? Or when you go to a talk expecting that it will be boring? How does this change your processes? So validation strengthens our construct system. So we want to know what's going on. We like knowing what's going on and how to categorize things. And so we seek, as you learn in social psych, we seek ideas that confirm our own biases. We seek information that confirms our predictions and ignore contradictory information. So if you have heard that a professor is a lot of fun, the professor may not do anything that's particularly fun, but you, being primed to perceive him as fun, having that pre-existing bias, will take things that might be neutral and interpret them as fun. That's what that's about. And self-fulfilling, well, we can create these situations just through our expectations. So if you anticipate that this professor is fun, you go to his class and maybe you're already feeling a little happy. Maybe you have jokes in your mind. Maybe you're tending to laugh more. And in turn, you might create a more fun environment. So here is a model of this: constructive alternativism, the fundamental postulate, and man the scientist. So we know the scientific process. We form a theory, we have a broad theory, we form a specific hypothesis from it, then we experiment, we observe what happens, and we adjust our theory. In everyday situation, we do this as well. These constructs that we have a construction system analogous to a theory. We anticipate what's going to happen based on our construct system, just as the hypothesis, the result of the hypothesis is predicted based on the theory. We then have an experience and we do something, we act in a certain way based on what we've anticipated, just as the scientist observes and experiments. And then we adjust our construction system or our constructs based on what we've just experienced. Similarly, the scientist adjusts the theory. So an example of this construct system: people don't seem to help others unless they're the only one who can. This is what a theory, a scientific theory. Therefore, they form a hypothesis. Given an injured person, those in a crowd will be less likely to help. Then they set up an experiment to test the hypothesis, this crowd situation with someone who needs help. And then once they find the results of the experiment, they revise the theory. In our construction system, we build ideas about the world through our initial experiences. Then we anticipate future events based on these initial experiences. So if we learned right off the bat that parties are stressful and not very fun, then we'll anticipate future parties to be not very fun. Then we'll go have an experience either that supports that initial construct, parties aren't fun, or it refutes it. Maybe the parties is fun, and then we'll revise the construct if that's necessary. So the process of construing is just interpreting the events based on these constructs. We construe events according to whatever information is available to us. So I maybe have a construct based on some childhood experience that babysitters would be a large brown-haired woman and that she's going to be really understanding. That's my schema, so to speak, or my construct. Then I will expect that she will be understanding each time, and I expect that others who look like these will be understanding. So we anticipate future events based on our construals. So we've construed this babysitter in a certain way, and now we've formed an expectation. And then so this is just looking back to the man, the scientist model, and then the experience corollary suggests that we're going to either successfully predict future events, yep, she's still understanding, or unsuccessfully, oh, she's not understanding. And then we'll have to adjust our construct or our construction after we learn that. And if we don't examine these things, if we don't make an effort to detect these patterns, we're not going to grow. Kelly makes a quote that he knew a school administrator who had 1 year of experience repeated 13 times. He never examined his processes, so he could never grow. So again, these are the definitions. The corollaries are factors that impact the process of construing, and construing is interpreting events to form constructs. So here we go, taking these terms that we just learned and linking it to this fundamental postulate so that model that we looked at before. So the construction corollary is this first step. Because of our construction system, we anticipate. The fundamental postulate is we anticipate, which leads to our subsequent behavior. And the experience corollary is like this learning that takes place after the behavior. There are some structures that we look at, the dichotomies, the things that we compare. So a person's construction system is composed of a finite number of dichotomous constructs. So it's finite, meaning that you're going to have some that are going to keep emerging. And so popular, unpopular maybe might be for you, or nice, mean. These are kind of like opposites, or else not always opposites. What if we had ambitious versus happy? Those aren't really opposites, but that's the way they are in our minds. So what do we learn about ourselves? Or what if we had ambitious versus lazy, which suggests that you'd be either ambitious or lazy, right? But these aren't diametrically opposed, but you, or the person who said this, is seeing them as opposites. So what does that mean about the way the person views the world? So under stress, then, this might mean that we're likely to switch poles. So if we are seeing ourselves as very happy and then we're in a stressful situation, we might become very ambitious. The organization corollary gets at how we organize these constructs within our minds. So we'll have some superordinate constructs that are dominant for us. They rise above the rest. These are the constructs like we might immediately group people, like sex. Like that might be the first characteristic we indicate about another human being. Core constructs are those that are central to an individual's identity, slow to change. Sometimes these might be racial, religious, or sex, but these are like at the core for how we've learned to look at the world, so they're hard to break out. And then peripheral constructs are less important. You know, they're easier to change, like an idea about what skateboarders are like when skateboarders aren't important to one's life. So we'll leave that there. And then we also have some corollaries that are socially embedded, like the individual corollary. So people are going to differ in their construction of events. Just as if two people watch the same thing, they're going to have different interpretations. Likewise, two people having similar life experiences will form constructs that are different. And you can understand this just by having yourself and one of your siblings tell the same story about a childhood event, and your perceptions will be very different. The commonality corollary suggests that if experiences are similar, the psychological processes will be similar. So, for example, if you have learned that when you get sick, someone takes good care of you, then that is how you're going to interpret getting sick in the future. And so you'll continue to have that in common with other people as well. The sociality corollary suggests that you have to understand others' constructs in order to be social with them. So you might not have that in common. So your experience of getting sick, for example, might be that someone said, okay, are you really sick? You're not staying home from school unless you're really sick. You have to stay in bed all day. You might have a very different experience when they were sick. And that doesn't mean you can't get along with the one whose experience of being sick is that they're going to be nurtured and cared for. It just means you have to understand this difference. Now you're going to be taking the role construct repertory test. You've already done this part of it if you follow these instructions well. And you'll see how to analyze it coming up next. So just again, what you're going to be looking for in your analysis are conscious constructs, like words that can be described and articulated. Unconscious constructs, like they're pre-verbal, they're feeling-based, learned in infancy and childhood. So these might be emotions that arise when you see certain types of people. And the rep test that you're taking, the role construct repertory test, will identify these dichotomies representing constructs through which you view the world. So you're going to be learning about the lenses you're wearing. Your pre-existing constructs will be elicited by the test, so you'll know, what are the factors that are guiding the way you categorize things in the world? Dichotomies will represent your key cognitions, like you deem this construct important. That's how you've grouped these people, which suggests it's an important dichotomy for you. And you might particularly value one of these dimensions, but when you're under stress, then you might fall to the other end, the one that you don't value. So you're going to be looking for patterns in your rep test. You're going to be identifying relationships in your data, like whether people are referencing you, good, bad contrasts, power contrasts like strong, weak, rich, poor, boss, employees, and then non-opposites like happy versus busy, kind versus loud. These suggest that, well, you're either kind or you're loud, but those aren't, so where is that coming from? So those are the most interesting ones in my view. And then you're going to look for patterns that are used more often. So dependency constructs, these nice to me kinds of things, might indicate a tendency toward dependence on others. Good-bad contrast might suggest a black and white view of the world, maybe sort of a distortion. Power contrast may suggest high ambition or that you're disempowered at the moment. Non-opposites, you have to look at these polarities separately. Why, in this kind-loud example, would you view loud people as unkind? Where is this coming from? Is it accurate? Is it something you should examine in yourself? So remember, our construct systems make our world more predictable. They can grow and change. Our construct systems influence our expectations and perceptions. Some constructs and some aspects of our construct system are more important or superordinate or core for us. Your construct system is your truth as you understand and experience it, nobody else's. This is who you are. Construct systems are not always internally consistent. Like there are some illogical things that are coming out of those childhood emotions, very likely. And the extent to which one person can understand another's construct system is a measure of that person's empathy. And that's the end of